Hello, everyone. Gagage Tasegobik Indijnakaj Wajish Gandoden Chimagwech Aloni Wach Ishinogan Gageshagak. So my name's Quill Christie-Peters. I'm Anishinaabe from Treaty 3 territory, which is in northwestern Ontario in northern Canada, aka Ojibwe, from the Ojibwe Nation. Anishinaabe peoples have been in the thickness of climate change for a very long time. We have watched our bodies change, our climates change, our environments change in ways that are irreversible, and we have lived at the edge of the world for a very long time. So today I'm going to talk about what environmental justice means to me as an Anishinaabe person, carrying an understanding of climate change and environmental justice as terms that compartmentalize what is really just settler colonial violence. So for me, this means centering the body in conversations of environment and climate, and centering the ability and the right to feel whole and full and loved in our bodies as something that cannot be separated from the physical defense of our homelands and territories. And I'm going to do this through talking about falling in love. I'm going to talk about falling in love with our own bodies as a profound act or practice of environmental justice to me. So when they first saw us, our bodies were wild and changing, our hair saturated with sweat and stories. When they first saw us, they could not comprehend the flickering of our skin into stardust, our laughter into song, our bodies into earth, the way we spill over everything they work so hard to maintain. They tried to get rid of our bodies. They cut us open, pulled air from lungs, starved us and beat us, but they could never lay us out flat. They could never reduce our beautiful dimensions. When they killed us, our bodies danced into nearby rivers and made the earth shake. When they could not kill us, they tried to make our bodies unbearable to live in, so that we would travel far away from our bodies, so that we could not do anything as they destroyed them below. Settler colonialism, to me, is many things, but it's always genocidal. It necessarily must remove Indigenous bodies from our homelands in order to clear land for settler occupation and capitalist production. So this removal and harming of Indigenous bodies is the prerequisite for the structures of settler colonialism to exist, and is the prerequisite for these conditions of climate change that we're now talking about in the mainstream today. And within the genocide of settler colonialism, there are also important layers that I have come to know. If settler colonialism cannot remove our bodies permanently from the earth as it would like to, it removes us from our homelands through displacement. If settler colonialism cannot kill us, it strategically attacks the relationships that are most threatening to the colonial project, our relationships to water, our relationships to the Indigenous women, Two-Spirit, trans people in our communities, our relationships to our own bodies, and to pleasure and to feeling good and whole. And to me, the harming of our bodies is an attempt to take away our love. Our climate has changed so much. Long before our temperatures began to fluctuate, long before the mercury built up in our waterways, they tried to take away our love. Here, climate change is founded on the absence of love and life for Anishinaabe bodies. Here, they must destroy us because they can see the ways we shift under the moonlight, the ways we are everything they can never be, the way our bodies hold our waters and our winds, wild and changing. When they look at me, they see how they will never know love. Love, for me, is a place of presence within the totality of all my relationships. It's the ability to be present within our webs of creation. And this love, this type of love, to me, lives within the body, within our bodies. So with this perspective, I think climate change and settler colonialism rob us of love in our bodies as a tool of genocide, as the prerequisite for removing our physical bodies from our homelands, which will then be exploited for capital. This is a picture of my dad's on the far left, and my auntie's in the middle, and my great-grandpa's on the right. And this picture would have been taken right before my dad and auntie were taken to residential school. So in my territory, there are lots of examples of settler colonialism that I can talk about, but two of the main kind of milestones of colonial violence in my family have been residential school and the construction of hydroelectric dams. Residential schools remove children's bodies from their homelands in conjunction with resource extraction projects such as dams. And our climate, not just our physical climate, but our emotional and spiritual climate, was changed forever. Those who survived residential school had their relationships to their bodies explicitly targeted. And this residential school is the one that my father went to. And the sexual abuse here was not just rampant or common, it was more systemic, was not just horrible, but unfortunately, I don't know how else to explain it, but torturous and grotesque. So in my opinion, they very specifically targeted our relationships to our bodies, our relationships to feeling good, our relationships to feeling pleasure. They so clearly targeted our relationships to love. And those who survived residential school, like my father and my auntie, would come out with no place to go. So the construction of dams on my territory was simultaneous and prevented my community from being able to live on our homelands. So they flooded not just our traditional territory, but our actual reserve as well. But we always spill over, we always find ways to love, and we always find ways to resist. When they cut your hair, they could not see the silk. When they cut your stomach open, they could not reach the earth. When they raped your body, they could not be whole. When we rupture, our ancestors always dance around our wounds. My beautiful brown father, I'm holding your small body under a blanket of stars. In between laughter, I whisper that you are loved and full and whole. My beautiful brown father, you spit in their faces when you walk down the streets of Toronto, carve another alabaster bear, paint us a new future, invent new ways to love, try your hardest to feel that warm love that they tried to take from you. One thing that's been really useful for me is to think about colonialism in terms of compartmentalization and how settler colonialism functions through the logics of compartmentalization. And only when our world can be kind of separated into distinctive parts that are considered separate from each other can those then be like ranked into hierarchies, which then create the structures of settler colonialism, create white supremacy and cis heteropatriarchy and ableism and ageism and capitalism. And as an Anishinaabe person, like physically displaced from my traditional territory, I actively resist the compartmentalization of my body from my homeland that tells me I'm less niche or less cultural if I physically reside off my territory. And also as an Anishinaabe artist, I actively resist the compartmentalization of my art from my life. So for me, my art is my body, is all of these relationships. They cannot be separated. I am presencing my body as inseparable from my homeland, my ancestors, the great beyond, my animal kin, and my community as an act of profound love for who I am and where I come from. And love is my Anishinaabe body. It is living in this body, full and whole. My body is the stars that I come from. My body is the love and labor of all of my ancestors before me, singing and drumming under a full sky of stars. My body is the submerged parts of my homeland, waiting to feel the sun once more. My body is how I both feel and exit structured time. As Anishinaabe, our bodies have always been our greatest technology. Wild and changing, we are always our homelands, our ancestors. We are always all of creation. This year, we had an independent provincial police organization, institution, conduct a formal investigation into the Thunder Bay Police for its treatment of Indigenous peoples. This review found systemic racism, systemic anti-Indigenous racism in the police force. They used language like appalling and unacceptable, and this is coming from a police body that itself is inherently racist, right? This year in Thunder Bay, we've witnessed a video of a cop assaulting a teen confined to a stretcher. This year in Thunder Bay, we've lost a young Anishinaabe boy who was trying to access mental health services, and an Anishinaabe woman who was found on this place called the Path of Death in Thunder Bay, which is like a bike path where so many Indigenous people have died that it has gotten that name. So for me, this is climate change. This is the climate change that Anishinaabe and other Indigenous peoples are living through in Thunder Bay. It really is, I don't know how else to describe it, but literally feels like you're living on the edge of the world. Many of our bodies have been and continue to be taken from this earth through colonial violence. Many of our bodies have been and continue to be found in our waterways. Many of our bodies have been and continue to be marked as disposable, dirty, and unworthy. There is no room for love. It is hard to love your body when it is systematically, materially, and symbolically hated. They have worked so hard to make us hate our bodies. So 3 years ago, I created the Indigenous Youth Residency Program to create a space for Indigenous youth to feel loved and whole in this context of places like Thunder Bay. This program is approached from my Anishinaabe understanding of art as inseparable from our bodies, and this program explicitly uses the body as a methodology, focusing on relationship building as artistic practice and honoring the internal knowledge that each of these youth have within their own bodies. Dismantling the compartmentalization of body from homeland, to me, is a process of falling in love. When I work with Indigenous youth, we are collectively falling in love with our bodies, with our ancestors, with our homelands, with our communities. And when we fall in love with ourselves, we remember how close our ancestors are and how they wait on the edges of our skin to whisper sweet teachings in our ears. We remember how powerful our bodies are and that we carry our homelands and waters within us. When we fall in love with ourselves, we reclaim that intimacy with our bodies. We reject that space of liminality that settler colonialism pushes us into. We become present in our bodies in a way that is essential for us to stop the physical ways in which our territories are being damaged. To me, falling in love with our own bodies is our right. Falling in love with our ancestors and homelands and feeling their reciprocal love exuded back to us is a right. And this is the heart of environmental justice to me. Love is the way that my hair reaches into the stars. It reminds me I am whole. Love is the sensation of my body spilling over onto the earth I walk on. Love is the way I so effortlessly care for my kin. The ability to tear myself open for those beautiful young ones to say, look at me, look at all of me, look at the broken parts and the whole parts, look at all the love I have for you. I will always love you. Love is what keeps me together, the spider's delicate strands weaving me within creation. So I want to end with my own body. I'm going to end with this painting of my body feeling pleasure and wholeness and fullness. But I hope that you now see that this painting is so much more than self-love or physical pleasure, because my body refuses this compartmentalization. I end with this painting that has made me fear for my life in Thunder Bay, because I have created an image of a brown body feeling whole and good. And I also end with an honoring of where this work comes from. I want to honor the youth who taught me how to love myself, who taught me how loving ourselves is the core of nation building and land defense and being a part of a community, who stand beside me as I show these works and know that they are not inappropriate or shocking, but that they are everything that I'm talking about here tonight. And I end with my father, because these paintings to me are so much about his body as much as they are about mine. It's about the sexual abuse he experienced in residential school, connected to my own experiences of sexual abuse, and my ability to say, no more, you cannot touch this relationship to my own body. And this painting is about all the bodies of all of my ancestors, healing all of the beautiful bodies taken and harmed, healing my homelands, all in one image, one map, my body, a love they can never comprehend. Miigwech.